Good afternoon. I hope everyone is enjoying the conference. Oh my God. Well, I'm thrilled to be joined by Christian Duffus of Phone Bank. But before we get into it, I'll tell you a bit about myself. I'm Clev Mesador, the Executive Director of the Blockchain Foundation. I have a public policy background, having worked in Congress for two members, Barbara Lee and Betty McCollum, and also in the Obama administration. It was actually in the Obama administration that I first learned about Bitcoin. And so I've run the gamut in terms of the roles that I've played, but my intersectionality is public policy and crypto. This is a unique week for us because this is the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute Conference, as well as the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation Conference, as well as Black Blockchain Summit. And so it's a unique week where these policy forums have intersected in a way that's actually very pivotal. When you look at what's happening in policy right now, every policy that has been proposed in Washington has centered around risk mitigation and consumer protection. Zero has focused on financial inclusion. Most people think that financial inclusion and consumer protection are the same thing, but they're actually polar opposites. Consumer protection says, I'm happy that you can finally buy a BMW in your nice suburban home, but you better park that BMW in the driveway and never drive it, because if you do, you're gonna die. And we need to protect you from the road, from the highway. Financial inclusion says, great, buy the BMW in your nice neighborhood. Make sure you have a driver's license. Make sure you have car insurance, right? Make sure you understand the various dynamics of the roads. And so right now, we have Washington telling us, be careful, be careful, be careful. That's great, consumer protection, but where's the financial inclusion? And what is financial inclusion? Financial inclusion is the conversations about access to capital for entrepreneurs like the ones here at this conference today. Where's the conversations about greater funding so that we can innovate? Where are the conversations about workforce training? Right now, crypto is a $1 trillion market. We have a company that has gone public. Companies are making bank. These are jobs where you don't need a degree necessarily, but who's training our communities for these jobs that will revolutionize finance and commerce? And where's the funding for financial literacy, right? We have federal agencies that are supposed to be focusing on financial literacy, FINRA, CFPB, excuse me. But where's the funding that's going to entrepreneurs who are focused on financial inclusion and digital assets? Right now, we know the nerve center of adoption is among communities of color, the working class, and young people. They are more likely to go to a credit union, a community bank, or a minority bank. Those are the entities that could actually provide them information about risk mitigation. Those are the institutions that could actually provide financial literacy training. But ironically, those are the institutions that are barred from offering digital assets. So inclusive finance, in order for it to work for us, in order for 10 years from now, when we're at the 16th Black Blockchain Summit, that we won't say, oh wow, we replicated big tech. Oh wow, where are the women, where are the people of color? We have to insist that we actually focus intentionally on inclusive finance. That's why I'm excited to have this conversation with Chris, his company is actually very unique in terms of how he came at digital assets and his perspective on inclusive finance. But Chris, start with sharing a bit more about your background.
Sure, I'm Chris Duffus, currently founder CEO of Phone Bank, but I'm a 3X fintech entrepreneur. I'm an HBCU grad. I went to Florida A&M University in Florida, and I was born in Kingston, Jamaica. And so if anyone understands sort of this American journey and this opportunity with cryptocurrency or the blockchain, vis-a-vis starting my career in banking and early technology. We sold our last company to SoFi, and a big ethos of me and my entrepreneurial journey has been about inclusion and rectifying these information asymmetries that exist among us. And as it relates to my new company, what we do is that we bridge sort of the fiat world to Web3 using, for mobile-first cash-based economies, and what makes it unique is that we utilize prepaid airtime, mobile money, bank transfers. Not common here in the States. Most, if all of our customers or users are actually across markets like sub-Saharan Africa that use their mobile phone as their primary banking mechanism, something that us in the States have only really started to understand that behavior in the last decade or so. But for the beginning of financial services has been the only way many people in these emerging economies have been able to have access to it.
And that's an important conversation because a lot of people here probably have heard of M-Pesa, but how many of you have heard of UPI in India or PIX in Brazil? So digital finance has closed the gap on payments where, in these countries where there has been a gap and lack of access to traditional financial markets, where now payments, people can make transactions digitally, but also very quickly and also inexpensively as well. Now, you're at the intersection, you've been able to marry, traditional finance, traditional tech with digital assets in a nice way. So when it comes to inclusive finance, where do you see that going, right? As we see the industry growing and more legacy institutions like BNY Mellon, BlackRock, and Fidelity has been in the space for a while, but where do you see that the future of inclusive finance? Is it sustainable in the paradigm we have right now?
Well, yes and no, but I liken it down to a metaphor that got me into the space. I was, like many of us, a tech geek, and I'd get these cool Nokia phones that had all these functionalities, and I'd get a SIM card and plug it in for use, in one of the U.S. carriers, and I could only make calls and send text messages, right? That's sort of the state of finance that we're in, and unlike sort of that paradigm where you as a consumer had no control over what functionality your phone could provide, you as a consumer now have so many more technical tools at your disposal that can allow you to access this world. And in many respects, I think there's an imbalance in terms of what a consumer can do versus what the government can regulate, and frankly, probably should be able to regulate. And one of the nuance of Clev's discussion is there's a bit of protectionism, paternalism that has been implemented into what has historically been policies aimed at inclusion, especially for various disadvantaged groups, whether race, economically, and which is somewhat frustrating in what's supposed to be a progressive policy agenda.
So what would be your advice for entrepreneurs as they're building in this environment where there's regulatory uncertainty, where there's not a lot of conversation about how to foster financial inclusion and make sure there's greater options in terms of access to capital, where there's workforce training for our communities? What would be your advice?
So I do think that most blockchain applications are not financial, even though they benefit from financialization. And so with that, seek out mentorship. I'm available on LinkedIn and most social media, as is Cleb. There's even a DISPI, like for DC, where a innovation office where you can sit down and talk to that team to help you sort out your idea. And there's the internet, right? I mean, part of the opportunity, and especially with law and a lot of these frameworks, a lot of these things are pretty freely available there without counsel to at least read. You might, obviously, I'm not an attorney, and I don't suggest that you take this as legal advice, but you know, you're at Howard University at a conference, you can probably read. And so I would do research as it relates to that before you go to market. And at the end of the day, simply understand the product and the market as it relates. You know, a lot of people here are crypto curious, but may not have purchased cryptocurrency, right? Set up a Coinbase account. Understand that process. It's, you know, it's not easy, but it's simple. And that's how I would get started and see what's out there. But I think we're at a unique inflection point in terms of innovation, as I've been around since, you know, start of my career in the original tech bubble. And I think the participants of that cycle have changed significantly. This is probably one of the most inclusive in terms of opportunity. Whether they get there or not, it's a different story, but anybody can join this opportunity. It's an open source revolution, and as a result, each one of us has an equal chance to get in the door. And so you use that and go forth and, you know, be successful.
And I would add to that, I do think, you know, you talked about the inflection point. I think, you know, I'm less optimistic in terms of the accessibility. Here's why. Because I do think that so many people in this room have built products and services. You know, Black and Latino communities lead national adoption of cryptocurrency, so there would not even be an industry without us. We are the largest holders of cryptocurrency. And technically, when you look at even Web3 leveraging the technology from the creator community, that is us as well. But how are we making sure that we have a pathway to become owners and producers and not just consumers? So recently, we created this event called Blockchain Brain Trust. We held the first one in Martha's Vineyard in August, because in August is when the Black Caucus and Black elected leaders from across the country gather on Martha's Vineyard to do fundraisers, to do speaking opportunities. And more and more from a policy perspective, we're seeing crypto becoming partisan. More and more Republicans are open and less Democrats. That hurts our communities. But bipartisanship is where we actually can ensure there's opportunity for Black and Latino leaders. So we need to make sure that we're intentional, that we're not building in a tunnel, and that we are looking at all resources, even as you mentioned, some of the legacy and traditional resources, but that we're seeing the industry pivoting, and we have to make sure that we're part of that growth, especially as it shifts. Any last remarks? I know we're on time.
Yeah, well, the technology in itself is not partisan in any way. And I would restate that this is a unique inflection point to build and participate from that vantage point. There's a lot of work still to be done for it to be equitable across the board, but I do think this is a unique opportunity. And in the same way that, you know, I have been able to build a leading project across the African continent, I do think that, you know, this is a global sort of inflection point that we should all sort of be cognizant of and see how we can participate. Thank you.
Is that my outro? Is that my music? Like, should I dance and shimmy off of this?
Yes, ma'am. Shimmy, shimmy, Cocoa Pop.
I know.
All right, let's give them a hand and thank you both for the incredible work you do. And